Sorry, thank you. Thank you.
Hello, child. Morning.
Hello.
Morning. Okay, so we're at 9:10 here. So we're just testing that the line is open. So we'll start at 9:15. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I mean, you can switch off your camera now if you don't want us to be looking at you as you are preparing, but just so that you know that we are here.
I'm ready. No, it's fine, really. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, fine. I suspect that I'm the only person here physically. So yes, please, they're here. But I mean, yes. So we start at 9:15. Okay, I have friends. I'm not here alone. Good morning.
I'm Gloria Chupo.
Hello, Gloria. Good morning. Good morning, Viola. Hello, Viola. I'm Agunbiade Gomez.
Oh, nice meeting you.
Do we have one more person? Are you Ongozika?
No.
No?
Shala.
Oluwashola Daniels. Okay, so Ongozika is the last person. Okay, we are 4 out of 5 so far, so we just keep waiting.
Pardon? It's fine.
It's really not fine, but
Maybe at the point, I will.
Pneumonia by the time I'm finished.
Yeah, I work, so sweating. It's still drying up a little.
Ooh, that's Auntie, come. I'm fine. The person online, maybe you talk to her. Okay.
Okay, because I just joined.
Talk to her.
Okay.
We have 1 minute.
It's fine.
Because I need my phone back.
Hello, ma.
Explain to her that you are the IT person.
Yeah, okay, ma. I'm the IT
Oh, which one? Maybe I should send her down this. Ask her for her number. Go and write it down because I need my phone for time. It's open.
Yes, I should.
Are you?
Thank you.
No, daughter is still there. I think she's on. Oh. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Good morning, everybody. No, I know it's early in the morning. Good morning, everybody. Better. Good. Hi. Kyle, good morning. Can you see us? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Good morning to you and to the panel.
Okay, fantastic. Here we go. My name is Agunbiade Gomez, and I'll be chairing this panel, and we are going to be talking about Untold Histories of Nigerian Women by Tayo Agunbiade. Before I ask Tayo to talk a little bit about her book, I'm going to ask the panelists to all introduce themselves, starting from the lady on my left. Yes, off you go.
Abiola Victoria Ayodokun.
Can you hear you?
I'm Abiola Victoria Ayodokun, PhD in Gender Studies, University of Ibadan. I also work with IFRA Nigerian Watch.
Okay. Come on, you're not awake. You're not awake. I can see. Okay.
Good morning. I'm Gloria Chukwu, Professor of Africana Studies, University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
You have a first assumption.
Good morning, everyone. I am Oluwashola Janice from the University of California, Davis. Thank you.
So on,
Ngozi is on.
Ngozi, are you online?
Yes. Good morning, everyone.
Hi, good morning. So can you introduce yourself, please?
Okay, I'm Ngozika Obiani from University of Nigeria, Nsukka. I'm currently a research fellow at University of Grenoble, France. Thank you.
Okay, so Tayo, I'd like to first start by congratulating you on this opus. For those of us who haven't seen the book, it's 764 pages. So I think all of us here deserve a round of applause, yes? And so, Tayo, congratulations. I personally found it's very inspiring, but I'm not going to take away the shine from the panelists. So I'm going to ask you, first of all, to perhaps read us a paragraph just to set the tone as to the intention of the book.
Thank you very much, Aduke, and thank you to all the panelists. It's a great pleasure to meet you all. Particularly, and pardon me for saying this, Professor Gloria Chukwu. So thank you all, ladies, for joining in. I would read from chapter 1 because this is the chapter that actually triggered the writing of this book. I'm a graduate of history myself, 1984, University of Lagos, though my career really is in journalism. But this was what I saw in the archives at the University of Ibadan that triggered my interest to say, well, none of my professors told me anything about women doing anything back in 1944. So I'll just read from the first page. And the title of the chapter is Women of Lagos Revolt Against Old Africa, quote and unquote. This was the headline in the West Africa Pilot of May 11th, 1944. There was great excitement at the 18 Broad Street residence of 47-year-old Onyinkan Morenike Abayomi in the colony of Lagos. It was Wednesday, 10th May 1944, and one of Nigeria's earliest female social political activists was in the middle of planning for a historic moment scheduled to be held later in the evening. The special occasion was the launch of her new political party, which she had named the Nigerian Women's Party. This was hardly surprising as her family was active in Lagos political and social circles, and she was also quite well known for her welfare events. At the age of 23, Onyinkan was the secretary of the British West African Educated Girls Club, BWAC, one of the three clubs founded and chaired by Lady Elizabeth Clifford, wife of Sir Hugh Clifford, Governor and Commander-in-Chief of Nigeria from 1919 to 1925. The BWAC Club spearheaded a series of fundraising activities such as concerts and bazaars towards the establishment of a government-owned ladies' college in Lagos. The outcome of their advocacy was Queen's College, which was formally established for girls by the colonial government under Sir Graham Thompson in October 1927. Onyinkan became a foundational member of staff and taught English and music at the college for 5 years. She was also a member of the Rose Band Club and the Ladies Progressive Club. The Ladies Progressive Club, where she served as the indefatigable, quote and unquote, secretary for a period of 15 years, also offered a few scholarship opportunities for girls to attend the college. By 1930, Onyinkan had become a captain in the Girls' Guide movement, and in 1933, was a founding member of the Young Women's Christian Association. So I'll just stop here because I'm just trying to provide a background into Onyeka's activities ahead of her coming together with a couple of other ladies, including some market women, to form the Nigerian Women's Party in 1944.
Thank you very much. And now I'm going to give each of the panelists here 10 minutes to give us their insights into the book. And I think I'm going to do it in alphabetical order. So, Abiola, you're first. Yes, over to you.
Thank you. Book review on Untold Histories of Nigerian Women Emerging from the Margin by Tayo Agunbiade. I would like to commend the author for her brilliant work. She was able to open up so many things that are key and fundamental, and has helped to see so many gaps that has been helping women to grow. I'm not comparing our work here. I'm not into comparing what scholars have done, but I want to commend our unique style of writing. I give it to her because she's detailed, comprehensive. So many hidden records of women were seen in our book. The book is not on gender, it's basically on women, the rise of women in Nigeria. I recommend this book to scholars. I recommend it to all libraries, not only in Nigeria, in the world, because you need to have a copy, you need to go through the book. When I started reading the book and in reviewing it, I was just talking to myself, I'm just telling myself that even if we dedicate a day, it's not too much to dedicate a whole day for the review of this book, because it's rich. It's a book we should really celebrate as Nigerian women. It's a book we should celebrate as scholars, because it has so many facts that we need to know and we need to carry over to our children. I was able to read so many books in Nigeria. I read Women book by Nina Mba. Nigerian women mobilized women political activity in southern Nigeria. And I could see Tayo Agunbiade filling some gaps here. I was able to read For Women and Nation by Johnson Odin and Nina Mba. I could also see this also as I was going through the book. Also, I was able to read Marjorie McIntosh's book on Yoruba women work and social change. I also read Taxation Women and the Colony by Egba Women by Judy Byfield. Very good book. But I was able to see what Agunbiade was able to do. And I want to conclude here by this saying, not the whole of the review, but now I want to conclude that the beautiful ones are not yet born. She did a very good work. And I see her filling also the gap of Samuel Johnson in the history of Yoruba. Because after reading through Samuel Johnson's book, I kept asking myself some questions and like, oh, I think there needs to be this. Also, that made me also want to read Nina Mba's book, and reading your book made me understand that, oh, it's really quenched that taste that I've been, that I had reading the book. She pointed out the underrepresentation of women, especially in politics, which was to me fascinating. There's been work on women in politics and the background, the hidden facts. Many times we just see women in politics as recent books, and the hidden facts about all of this many times they don't come with the history of some of these articles I read. About the book has 64 pages, if I'm right, including figures, appendices, bibliography, and Index, and now 20 chapters, including Women of Lagos Revolt Against Old Africa, which really, that's the first chapter of the book. So interesting to me. I've been reading about African Women Tax Revolt. I read about African Women Tax Revolt, about Women Tax Revolt, and she opened my eyes to so many revolts. And at times, the reaction men we give to women, if they want to make a comment, they say it as revolt, like wanting to show, see it as, I really, 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 really enjoy this aspect of our book. Our female education ends in marriage. Oh my God. the letter of application, the WASP ladies, Alima Tupelewura, very brilliant work from them. Petition power, so many, and to mention a few, let me start by saying that the author helped to see the contribution of Oyinkan Morenikeji Abayomi. Oyinkan knew what she wanted, and I really celebrate her because she was able to lay foundation that so many women are following now. As a woman, she had to fight for women unborn. She was not idle. She was not selfish and self-centered. She served as the Secretary British West Africa Education Girls Club, Ladies Progressive Club, Captain in Girls Movement, founding member of Young Women's Christian Association. She attended Queen's College, which she really facilitated so many things about. She served in the Second World War, fetched her honor for the contribution she made during this, and which were so brilliant. She did a very good work. Oyinkan revolt against women placed in the kitchen, rebel against the old order that prevents them from serving in municipal and legislative council, and also form women's party to protect their interests. This I like. And further reading, I got to know that she has a goal. She was actually driving towards a place, and she actually knew what she wanted, like I said. Oyinkan really knew what she wanted. And the goals of Oyinkan were in 4 key areas, which were education, brilliant. Employment, good, we are all here. So, I'll give examples of that in the course, that was in chapter 3, application letter. So she really did very well by doing this. The economy, adult women suffrage. She has really paved the way for women. And also, like, I also commend Agunbiade for really acknowledging some women that have helped in struggle in Nigeria, in person of Mama Bolande, and where she was able to come up to bring some of the things she has done in helping women, and so many others, to mention a few. In chapter 2, the word female education ends in marriage was derogatory. To me, I called Sir Thomas, Governor of Nigeria and Commander-in-Chief of Nigeria in 1925 to 31, saying the essence of women's education was to equip them as a housewife and mothers. This wanted to play out in the letter of application in chapter 3, when Miss Ekong in 1922 from Calabar province submitted a letter of application for a post in civil service. It became an issue, The exchange of correspondence over Miss Ekong's letter shows the patriarchal and hierarchical attitude towards men. And it actually wanted to go in confirmation with what Sir Thomas said, that the essence of women's education was to equip them as housewife and mother. I'd like to say, I know time will not permit me, but I'd like to say here that we can see the labor of our heroes past in the fight for women. And I want to say now that we should not let it be in vain. Thank you so much. I enjoy reading your book.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abiola. And yes, I agree with you completely on Lady Abayomi. I was lucky enough to meet her when she was in her maybe 2 or 3 years before she died. And what a woman, even at that age, what a woman. And I'd like to just add to what you've added. I think a main aim of the party, and I'm quoting here, the formation of this party should not only champion women, but also reduce the extreme selfish motive of menfolk. And I think it's something that things haven't really changed. Now, next up, we have Gloria Chukwu. Over to you, ma'am. 10 minutes.
Yeah, Untold Histories of Nigerian Women, as the chairperson and the last speaker have said, is quite a massive and rather intimidating book with 20 chapters and over 700 pages. It is quite an undertaking, an impressive undertaking by Toria Agunbiade. The book is a demonstration of the agency of women, 100 years of women's agency running between 1922 and 2022 in shaping Nigeria's history and development in spite of patriarchal and of course social cultural barriers and inhibitions. The book also highlights the imperative of collaboration and networking, seeking and courting support and working relationships with stakeholders and groups, especially as demonstrated by women like Oyikan Abayomi in the formation of the Nigerian Women's Party. She courted and worked with men and other social groups, including, of course, women and various women's groups, to be able to achieve that first feat in Nigeria's women's history and also Nigeria's political history. Another woman that demonstrated similar feat was Alimatu Falewura and her leadership of the Lagos Market Women's Association, especially through the 1920s and 1940s struggles against colonial policies and in support of labor's strike, especially the 1945 railway strike workers event. The book also highlights diverse instruments of mobilization and resistance deployed by Nigerian women. Such instruments include speeches, petitions, letters, public notices, marches, protests, sit-ins, even nudity, since she covered up to 2020. The 1980s saw mobilization of or resistance of women in oil-producing areas adopting nudity against multinational oil corporations. The book also highlights the state and men's reprisals against women for asking questions and demanding for positive changes to better their lives, the lives of their families and communities. There were extreme cases of violence against women, especially in the hands of the police and the military. The military got involved in modern times, even during Obasanjo's administration and so forth. Women were not spared because of the agenda. They were punished harshly, and a good number of them lost their lives as a result. I appreciate the degree of statistical data and tables provided in the book, especially from chapters 9 through 15. those tables and pieces of information are raw data that researchers should take advantage of, especially those that could not have access to Nigerian reports or even archival reports regarding colonial records and events. But I also do have some questions because this is supposed to be a critical review of the book. Nigeria has a demonstrated history of women's movement, comparatively. And yet, it has also a record of women's underrepresentation in the country's electoral, constitutional, political, and administrative systems. If you compare Nigerian women's status or political status to other African countries, especially South Africa, or even Rwanda, where women have achieved increased representation in government, especially in parliament. Those two countries also, especially South Africa, has a history of women's movement. And in that regard, the demonstrated strong history of women's movement has helped South African women to achieve political status in their country. But in the case of Nigeria, Nigerian women still lag behind. So my question is, why is Nigeria unique in spite of the strong women's movement that the country has had since the colonial period? That's one of the questions that we might discuss later. Then I also touch on the sources that the author used, colonial era documents such as letters, minutes, reports, and so forth. But I didn't see, or I would have loved to see more analysis and interpretation, particularly alongside what other experts have written on the key subjects or topics covered in the book. Women's economic activities are obviously not the focus of the book, but I also know that access to economic resources and women's economic mobility, independence, and prowess have a lot to do with their access to political power. So one would have loved to see some kind of economic analysis or interweaving of economic activities of women, although they showed up in a number of areas, but it's not the way one would have expected it, or it could have been done much better to enrich the book. There is no question in my concluding remark that Agunbiade has given us an impressive and a massive reference book. It is a reference book. Some of the unanswered questions in the book should serve as pointers to new and further research activities, and will definitely help to advance and expand the frontiers of Nigerian women's history and studies. Well done, and thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I think that was very insightful. And I particularly liked your comment on the economic resources, because could Oyinkan Abayomi have achieved what she achieved without the background of without the elite background that she in fact came from? So let's put that as another question. Now I'm going to hand over I'm going to skip Shola, because I feel that Ngozi, who is online, is feeling a bit left out. So, so Ngozi, over to you. So
thank you, everyone, and thank you.
10 minutes.
permit me to, ma'am, permit me to use Tayo to refer to you because of, I don't want to mispronounce your name, your surname. So thank you for that wonderful book. And then thank you, Professor Gloria Chukwu, for certain things you mentioned as a historian that I also found out in the book. And then when I was reading that book, immediately I saw the book when Professor Saheed posted it. I was like, wow, this is good, without going into it, because in my university, they introduced a new course when I came in as a graduate assistant that I've handled over the years, and we've been trying to get books that we can recommend to our students. And then the first thing I will tell you, Ma'am Tayo, is that my government curriculum, the government textbook I was taught with in the secondary school, they were all deceptive, because I never knew that women actually played this kind of roles even in the nationalist movement and up till now. And I was like, especially when I read the WASU ladies, I was like, oh, what? So my government textbook never mentioned any woman participant in that movement. I thought it was an all-men affair. And then I like it that the enormous archival sources you read and your work is also a kind of, as Professor Gloria Chukwu pointed out, has openings. Anyone who is interested in studying gender studies, reading that book will give you numerous research titles to work with. I saw many research work. Any student, I was like, if any of my postgraduate students want to embark on any research related to women or even politics in Nigeria, that the first point of contact will be to read your work, and then we'll find out issues where the person can go further can do further as a postgraduate studies. And again, I enjoyed every bit of it. And I don't even know where to start. From what I heard, the women that their sufferings, their trials, their triumphs in the process of trying to be recognized in Nigerian politics. And again, like one of my research, my book, I've been trying to see if I can complete. I argue in my book that despite the fact that people tend to argue maybe in favor of women in pre-colonial Africa, that they have this a kind of equality with men, kind of. Some scholars say they were complementary. There are certain gender biases that are not obvious, that these things, gender biases, are still there, and they even continued into these contemporary times. And I saw it in a lot of the parliamentary debates, especially the chapter where you say Ruano. You find out that a certain debate has been on and on and on. And then you find out that some parliamentarians from the northern Nigeria will always bring out the issue of religion, that's against the religion, to the extent that at a point I read where somebody said that the Bible, quoting the Bible, which also resounds with what Uchem wrote about overcoming subordination in Igbo land, where she said that what they do is that men use Bible to also justify women's subordination in Africa, the same way they invoke the Quran, they invoke the Bible to also make women to remain in that kind of subservient position. And I'm grateful that the nationalist movement wasn't a men thing, that women played active role over and over and over and over again. And what some of us are enjoying today are the tears, the trials of these forerunners that actually fought for the women. And then the most, another part I read that I felt so bad was when I discuss African women in history with my students, we discuss about Alahaja Sambo. I don't know if I'm getting it.
Haja
Yeah,
Sambo.
as somebody, I used to teach my students, look at the kind of environment, the kind of restriction, cultural restriction, religious restriction, but this woman proved herself. And then it was disheartening that despite all she did, the kind of tragedy she suffered at a point where she went for rally and she was waylaid along the road, and the kind of the violation to her person was, I felt tears. And when we discussed about her, that part never came in. And what I will tell you is that I want to thank you for this, and for opening gaps in scholarship for further studies with your research work. Thank you.
Have to move over there because
You can hear us now. Can you hear us now?
we were sabotaged.
Yes, I didn't know that I was talking to myself.
No, but I could hear you. I could hear
Yes,
you.
you guys.
But you are back. So continue, please. You are at Haja Sambo and all the trials and the tribulations, and it's not just the Quran. People who are Christians also use religion as a tool of confession. So that's where you are. Carry on. I'll give you 2 extra minutes for that.
Okay, thank you. So finally, I thanked her for that. Her research is not a kind of a conclusion of women participation both in Nigeria, both economically or politically, that her research opened wider gaps for scholarship for further researches, because when you read the work, you find that there are certain areas that needs further interrogation or further explanations, which further research can open up a little bit further.
You don't want to tell us what we couldn't hear. Okay.
I'm even finding it difficult to hear.
Yeah, let me go over there. We just all go over there. Yes, I think we should all go over there. Okay, so ignore us while we do a fashion parade. Okay, so what I was saying was, would you like to quickly go over what we couldn't hear? Because I think the bit before the finally. But if you're okay, we'll go on to the next person.
Okay, I think you should maybe further discussions, because I have maybe during the further conversations we can, I don't know, when you talk something, you can't bring them back again, like the way you've said it earlier. Anyway.
Can I ask? So I'm gonna ask.
You can come. Just Oh, sorry.
Shola. Okay, where do I sit? I think sit here and see if she can hear you. If not, just move here, because I think it's important that we all hear. Just move your chair.
Will I be the only one here?
No, just one your chair, just so she can, because the thing needs to be plugged, because they didn't charge it. And then you can then join us. I ask you all to move down out of the chair, and she wants you to So, Shola, over to you. Sorry about that. So, 10 minutes starting now.
Okay. Sorry.
I'll remind you in 2 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to this book review panel. And my name is Oluwashola Daniels, like I said before. And when I was preparing this, concluding my presentation yesterday night, a certain bird whispered to my brain that, you know, many people might present before you and they will say everything about the book. So find a plan B. So when she said I'll be the last person to speak, you know, I heard a voice in my brain again that you see what I told you. You won't repeat what everybody has said. So find a plan B. So I'm going to be presenting my plan B. I won't repeat what everybody has said. Yeah, so generally the book is about addressing male-authored narratives through women-authored petitions, letters, minutes of council meetings, public notices, and the rest. But I'm going to say one or two words about Agunbiade's, you know, should I call it analysis or discussion, yeah. So I think the book is about how women identify and how society identifies them. Because, you know, women like Pele Aniwura, right? Women like Onyinko and Bayomi, they identify as politicians, state makers, colonial state makers, of course, nationalist leaders, but society sees them as home nurturers, and even professionalizes wifehood and home management by creating courses in housewifery. That's one of the first times I will hear that. You know, housewifery as a kind of course you go and study in the university, right? You know, as if there were no housewives before the colonial period. We had nothing like housewife, nobody, you know, like that. And the author further demonstrates a crucial theory that I find very interesting, which I call belonging, because she didn't mention it, but I read it throughout every page of the book by demonstrating it throughout the book. You know, by saying the political, economic, and social spaces belong to women as much as it does men, Agunbiade makes a case for belonging. In other words, politics only seems dominated by men because women's participation is underreported. So the book is simply saying women belong in politics, women belong in the economy, women belong everywhere. It's because it's underrepresented. That is why you see that it's as if women are not, you know, represented. And there's evidence in women establishing political parties, e.g. Onyikon, Abayomi establishing Nigeria Women's Party in 1944. This connects the work to similar literature on women and nationalism, such as Elizabeth Schmidt's Mobilizing the Masses and Andrea Vasca, Short State, corroborating existing scholarship and Schatz's new grants on specifics of women's involvement in state-making and nation building. The specifics about Onyinkan and Pelewura, Kuti's involvement in politics and state-making are the sources historians or researchers could consult in similar research. In other words, of course, there are many authors, you know, talking about nationalism. That is, it's not as if women have not been, you know, in nationalist struggles all along. It's because they have not always, you know, been studied. And Schmidt has said a lot about this. That is, when we look closely at the history of Africa, we'll see many instances of women's participation. And I should say that the book might seem on the surface as an elitist view of, you know, Nigerian women, the popular Onyinkan, the popular Aniwura, the popular Kuti, but no. It's also about indigenous women in the marketplace and the girl child, that is the hawkers. For instance, Pelewura led market women and obtained their signatures for their petition. So obtaining their signatures also shows that it is not just about the elite, it's also about the everyday woman. Again, this is where I see the book conversing with Abosede George, Making Modern Girls, on girl hawking, apprenticeship, and street economy. And this is the way I see this book, as refreshing existing scholarship that we already know. And I should say this too, some parts of the book stood out for me. It was also eye-opening to know that not all women wanted political participation. Because that is one, in fact, I should say I'm a feminist. Of course, all my life has always been in gender studies. But that is, one of the rare things I found, that not all women, of course, I know that in the United States, in Europe, not all women too also want it. But in this case, elite women also coming out to say that we don't even want it. It's societal for you to say we should participate in elections. And this is an example, Madam Ironke Ajayi, on page 127. That's the title of the woman, the editress and publisher of the Nigerian Daily Herald, also disagreed with the idea of enfranchisement of women and described it as a suicidal agitation. On Saturday, imagine that. On Saturday, 30th January 1932, she published a front page editorial and where she says, "We hope the advocates of votes for women will now see their folly and refrain from further pursuing their suicidal agitation." So for me, this stood out so sharply, because it shows that Onyikon, Pelewura, Kuti were not just fighting men, they were also fighting women. So that shows that what they did is, we can only imagine it, we cannot really understand it, because they came up at a time that everyone everywhere was just against them. So, and I feel that is one way that historians, should begin to look at, studies of feminism, studies about gender, and how much more women have done to get to where we are today. Yeah. Do I still have 2 minutes? Okay. Yeah. And in conclusion, I have a question. Yes. That is, apart from the fact that this book is refreshing, I just don't want to be the only one to say that this is how it connects to this book or that book. I want to ask Agunbiade, that is, how does it contribute to the current existing scholarship, especially in Nigerian gender? For instance, when you look at Judith Byfield's The Great Upheaval, Oyerinka Oyewumi's What Gender is Motherhood, you will see many connections, but how do you see this book, connecting to, all these works? For instance, Byfield's work is closely similar to this work. Then on Oyewumi is on motherhood, and of course, Pelewura and Oyikon made allusions to motherhood and parenting duties. So how do you see your work in conversation with these authors? Thank you.
Shall we swap?
Yeah.
This is also called musical chairs panel as well, in case you didn't know. So thank you very much. I think you have the questions, Tayo. Before, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask the audience if they have any questions, so you can take everything at once. A comment that I just had, a couple of comments I just had, listening to the panelists was, and having read your book, was how many protests there were. At one point, I was writing them down, and there were like 14, because you just hear of the About Women's War, and you hear of the Abeokuta tax riots, and you hear about Pelewura's petitions, but they were on and on and on. And you think to yourself, how did they get the impetus? How were they brave enough? And would we, when we look at ourselves, could we have been brave enough? And I think sometimes you think to yourself, maybe we are a little bit lacking. And then the other thing that came out as well was the influence of people, how Ladi Shehu and Elizabeth Ivase in the north were influenced by the work of Fumi Masankusi in the south. And I think that collaboration across regions is something that I think is very important and very noteworthy. So I'm going to ask the audience if they have any questions. Yes, would you like to come up? Because, you know, we're all sharing the mic. You know, in the olden, you know, yesterday they carried the mic to you, but today we are in the struggle.
I'm going to the mic.
You are going to the mic because we are in the struggle. So we are coming to the trenches. No, because it will die again. Please come. No.
Thank you.
You may sit, but I'm in.
Oh, sure. Yes, thank you, Professor Tayo. Thank you very much. I'm enjoying this session. Okay, I'm Professor Emeritus Uche Azikiwe, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Professor Emeritus Uche Azikiwe. My first question or observation is that there was no mention of Funmilayo Ransome Kuti. I don't know because I haven't read the book. So I don't know whether there's any chapter or section, because I know she played a significant role in mobilization of women in politics in Nigeria. Two, it seems also that it is just Yoruba women that were, you know, the focus of the book. Because I know that the Umuahia women were there that revolted against tax. I don't know whether you didn't capture them. Then, okay. So my dear, can I go? Okay. So I want us to know also, somebody presenting or the reviewers try to compare South African and Nigerian women or South African and other women. And I think this is a comment. I think why it seems that the South African women are more involved in politics or better than other women in other parts of Africa is because of the way they got their independence. In Nigeria, it was on a platter of gold. No war, no nothing. But in South Africa, for how many years under apartheid? So both men and women, boys and girls were all involved in the struggle for independence. I'm just saying that that may be the reason why women in Nigeria are not very keen in playing part in politics. So I want us to look into these few areas. If there are more, I'll come up again. Thank you.
One more, the name in blue and the here.
Could I answer these few first? Do you mind?
Oh, okay. No, please answer those few first. So then we have.
That's okay. I don't lose track.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So we'll answer these and then we'll take the next three. I'll keep you on track for the timing. We have.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your nice comments and thoughts about the work. This book took me 5 years to do, going around all the archives in Nigeria to make sure that I get the original information, and then crossing over to the UK to go further deep into the British Library, the library in Oxford, the library in Cambridge, to pull out all this information. So for me, it is giving women a voice, because the stories are just there, hidden. Nobody is delving into and pulling it out. That is driven me. I'd like to start with Professor Uche Azikiwe. Thank you, ma'am, for what you said. Chapter 20 is devoted to Funmilayo Ransome Kuti and the tax protests. I was able to go to the archives in Abeokuta and pull out the records of the council minutes, the conversations that took place between her and the allocations that took place between members of her team. I was very deliberate in the way I went about chapter 20. Because I didn't want it to look as if it is just Funlaya and Sokuti in the middle of this tax protest, which, if we are not careful, that is what people think. There were other women around her secretary, her treasurer, and other women whose names I was able to find out and insert into what I wrote. So that speaks to that. Now, as for Yoruba women, no, ma'am, that is not the case. I was deliberate, and I'm very passionate about one particular woman, Adanma Okpara, the wife of Michael Okpara. I always comment on social media whenever they are talking about Michael Okpara, Premier of Eastern Nigeria. This is what he did. That is what he did. I always put a little comment there and say, Adanma Okpara was not a political hostess. Sorry, a social hostess. She was a politician in her own right. And if you read one of the chapters, I believe it is chapter 13 of this book. Ma'am, you may have to get a copy of this book. Please do. I devoted a section to Adama and the exchanges she was.
Oh. Oh. Wow. Did they put the generator back on? No, that's it. This is the first time. Oh. Wow. In fact, this is the first time in 5 years, actually.
So she was tackling them. She spoke about bride price.
You can hear us.
Copies of her. Yes, I can.
Okay, so hang on. The light has gone, so we can't see you, but we can hear you. So go on. So go on. We'll pretend that we are doing radio.
I found copies of what she said about. I found copies of what she said about back in the Eastern region. There are speeches of Margaret Epo. Margaret Epo spoke in the House of Chiefs. When herself and Janet Mokelu were nominated to be in the House of Chiefs, she showed a lot of political sagacity. The first thing she said was, listen, gentlemen, we are not here to take the feathers from your cap. We are here to compliment you, because she knew that the chiefs were frowning at the fact that two women were sitting in their midst. I gave a list of all the women, the names I could find, who were either interim chairs in the urban district councils in Enugu, in Onitsha. I wrote all their names. Jessie Ebuche. I don't know if anybody is familiar with that name. She was somebody who sat in the council, and she was also a representative of the women. And I commented there that, look, if you have a woman, on the urban council, it means that when they are talking about tax, you have a woman who can now speak up from the women's perspective. So that answers that. As for the example of South Africa and Rwanda, and why women are not participating, or we are participating, which we're not getting very far, I think it has to do with our history. That is what I try to trace. That is part of the theme of this book. That right from day one, right from 1922, when the principle of political representation was introduced to Nigeria, it was a male-dominated idea. Even to the likes, and I'm sorry to say, the likes of Herbert Macaulay, though he was on the side of the women when it comes to helping them write petitions, but he didn't put any woman in his hierarchy, and all of this is documented in the book. So I traced the history of male domination of our political system to try and tell readers that this is perhaps one of the reasons why we are at where we are. And look at us today in the 10th Assembly. The situation is still the same. How many women participated? I always do the numbers. I did a countdown of the number of women who took part, the number of women who won, number of women who are seated there, and it has been the same story. So it is left for other researchers to also try and interrogate further as to what is the reason, why is it that Nigeria, the giant of Africa, one of the most enlightened countries in the world, we are still far behind when it comes to representation of women in our political system. I hope that I've been able to answer Professor Uche.
Yes, thank you. So can I remind you about Professor Gloria's questions? Why is Nigeria unique in spite of our activism, which I think you've already touched on. Perhaps there could be more analysis of key topics and your view on economic resources and social mobility. Those were, I think, yes.
Well, perhaps it is something that skipped my mind because, like I said, this 5-year journey, sometimes in the middle of being overwhelmed and pulling out my hair, I wasn't funded. I did this purely out of curiosity, to try and get on silence women's voices. But a lot of the
we are cheering and clapping here.
Sorry?
We are cheering in case you can't hear us.
Oh no, I can't. So, speak to what Professor Chukwu said. If you're not, I recognize that if you don't have the economic power, then trying to then pursue political power is a hard thing to do. And a lot of women were not economically empowered. The likes of Onyeko Abayomi, because she came from a rich family, her father was Kitoye Ajasa. So she had an uncle, Eric Moore, so she came from that background, but she was able to pull in. She recognized right from 1935, she had recognized that, look, if you sideline the indigenous women, the market women, the unlettered women from this struggle, then you're not going to get very far. So she broke down the barriers and pulled them in. And possibly, that was where the likes of Pelewura also said that, look, I don't have to have so much money, or so much economic comfort, but I can still use my voice to get where I want to be. And by the way, I tried to also make sure that I put in the names of other market women. There were the petty traders, and they all had their different guilds, and they had the head of the different guilds, the oyster sellers, the roots and herb sellers, the bead making people, and all of them had, I found all of their names and slotted it in. So, it much as, the economic empowerment of women is an issue, I wasn't able to interrogate it further. I wasn't able to get much information on, how further they could have gone with the little resources that they had. Of course, education also is part of it, because people like Margaret Ekpo and Janet Mokelu, they also were from, I would say, semi well-to-do backgrounds, and they were able to push ahead and make their voice heard and be consistent in what they were doing. Up in the north, again, the issue of economics also, I was not able to get too far in that, but the likes of Ladi Shehu and Gambo Sawaba, and of course a lady called Elizabeth Ivase, they were also, they were influenced by Funlayo Ransom Kuti. As a matter of fact, Ladi Shehu, who was one of the earliest columnists for the Nigerian Citizen, the forerunner of New Nigeria Today newspaper, she was a neighbor. When her father went to work in Lagos, they were living next door to Funaya Ransom Kuti. So she was able, she said this herself, in an interview that I found that she gave back in the 90s. And as for Elizabeth Ivase's father took her, as a child, to a rally that Funaya Ransom Kuti addressed. The rally was being done to gather monies for the people, the NCNC, National Council of Nigeria and Cameroons, to go to England, to go to England to tackle the government about the 1946 Richards Constitution. And so Elizabeth Ivase watched Funaya Ransom Kuti, and then she was inspired to pursue a political agenda when she grew up. So I hope that I've touched on what adequately touched on what the professor raised. The last speaker, last but one, Miss Daniels. Pardon me if I didn't get your title right. She said, "How do I think it contributes to current scholarship in connection with other authors? To give a voice to women. Of course, there are many books out there, But I think that what I have read in bits and pieces here and there, I see that there's some inaccuracies. First of all, a lot of stuff I saw online, for instance, I saw that there's a lot of inaccuracies about what some of the women have done or have said. And I felt that let me go as far as I can and pull out all this information and see how I can correct some of this information that's out there. And furthermore, give women a voice and let the world know that Nigerian women also were active in this in nation building and state making. You see that I did something on early women barristers because I became so obsessed. It became an obsession that I found out that Stella Thomas, whose ancestry bestrides 3 countries, Nigeria, Ghana, and Sierra Leone, and of course she ended up in Nigeria, was said to have attended Oxford. And so I became so obsessed with it that I actually contacted the Oxford itself to say, I want her records. And they said, lo and behold, this woman did not attend our university. This is no disrespect to her. So I decided to go to the Middle Temple Inn, and they gave me her records, her school records back in 1929, where she filled the form saying what schools she went to and how she went about her journey and how they lived on William Street. And she was the first daughter, or she was a daughter of PCJ Thomas. And so that led me to say, okay, what about other women, other barristers, let me find out about them. And lo and behold, as I was digging here and there, I found out that some of them were even political animals. They participated in the Lagos Municipal Council elections in 1950. So a lot of them did so many things, and the stories are not out there. And I didn't just rely on records. I went to the families. I was fortunate enough to find the family, for instance, of Olabisi Alakija. Her son was telling me that he doesn't even know that he went to bring out all the photographs of his mother, but he said he was a child. So I said, okay, your mom was a politician, and she won elections in the Accra Town Council in 1950. And he said he didn't even know that. So, so it's all part of my power, apart from being curious, to also put out the stories there of what Nigerian women were able to do, and how we have to build on it. And of course, as has been said here, use it as a springboard for others to carry on this journey. Before I round up, I just want to say quickly that one of the other things I tried to do as well is just to show the imbalance in our country. And that is why I went all out to look at the honors list, the national honors list. I don't know if anybody has been talking about this, but back in 1964, Wura Oleson, who was a senator in the Western region, who was fond of, when they are talking about, they may be talking about the nuclear pact that was being signed that Nigeria's wrote. Wura Oleson will now find a way of slotting in a woman's perspective. And I put all her speeches in the book. And so she has said that, look, when you are giving out these national honors to Nigerians, remember the women. And so I traced it all the way up to, I think, 2022 or so, and I found that it is so lopsided up till now, where women are given, I think we have about 8. So the top 5 you find mostly are dominated by men, while the bottom 5 are women. And even in some cases, you find that the national honors are even the bottom 5, they are men that are slotted in. So women even form a minority even within the bottom 5. The one that really then got me was that when we were in Nigeria, the centenary of Nigeria was being marked, only 8 women were being recognized. I said, how can that be?
Yeah. So thank you, sir. We have just 3 questions. I'm going to ask the submissions to be quick, so because we are running out of time. So the lady
go jump off on
the
springboard and
okay, yeah.
No, I'm trying to take it to them.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your book. My name is Inakule Gertrude, but I would rather prefer to be called Irelusime Inakule. Thank you so much for the book. I've not read it, but from my own observation, I believe history is a way of learning in order not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Now, my question is on women representation. Do you think that the way women are being represented currently is how it should be? Do you think we are still underreported in the media as being political actors? And what were the strategies adopted by these women in your book? And how can we learn from them moving forward? That's my question.
Thank you for your book, Dr. Agunbiade, and I'll definitely have to get it based on what we've heard today. And my question is about archives that you came across. Some of the archives you've mentioned, we may know about, are accessible because they record figures that we know about. But as many have already said, all these political figures, they had people around them, they had treasurers, secretaries, other members in the movement. All of those individual people have records too of their own lives, either or of their own political activities, of their own involvement. So were there any surprising, maybe personal collections, family collections, places where the archive of Nigerian women's political history exists that are not the standard archives that we usually go to? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So mine is just a short one. My name is Mubarak Tukur. I also, my recent page is on women and peace building in northern Nigeria. So I was just curious to know the other part of the country, the women there. Can you hear me, Prof? Hello, Prof. Hello, Prof, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
The other part of women in the northern part of the country, I was curious to know a bit about Gamba Sawaba because she was missing in all the discussion, her struggle in women's movement in the northern part of the country. I tried to reflect this in my thesis recently. So I just want to know, because I also want to know about culture, because the other speaker, she talked about religion, how religion was trying, the interpretation of religion, both Muslims and Christians were trying to put women in a certain way. Then where do you put culture? Because this is also another patriarchal issue that we have to battling within the part of this country. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Samuel Wycliffe from Veritas University, Abuja. My question, even though I've not read the book, but I'm curious to know whether the book was able to identify the changing dynamics in terms of women participation in politics in the pre-colonial era, colonial and post-colonial era. Thank you.
Okay, Tayo. Okay, one last question. Quickly.
Just a very quick question. We're all very excited, some of us who haven't read the book, but where can we find the book? Where can we find the book? Yeah.
Okay, so Tayo, back to you. And please, as you address the question of Hajat Sawaba, please, may I just quote your quote that where she says, someday the harems will be open to the women and the women of the North will dominate the election of the future governments. So yes. Okay, over to you, Tayo.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm not a professor. My background is in journalism, and I continue to write. If you check me online, you see all my stuff. I keep writing. Where to find the book? The book is published by Cambridge Scholars here in the UK. I couldn't get a publisher in Nigeria. This has been a lamentation that Barrister Aduke is familiar with. That when I started out, no publisher would touch me, and I didn't know why. I couldn't understand it. So Cambridge Scholars, I don't know how, so it can be got online, can be got from Amazon.com. It can be got, from Foyle's Bookshop and Waterstones, but it's as being online. There's a talk about getting it into Nigeria, but that is, I guess, in the by and by. So thank you for that question, the last speaker. The fourth question, because I'm going from the back. To identify the changing pattern from the colonial to pre-colonial, post-colonial, colonial to post-colonial. From what we know, in pre-colonial times, and somebody had mentioned it here, women were a bit more active within public administration in the pre-colonial era, both in the kingdoms and the societies that we had in what I would call of Nigeria of today. It wasn't Nigeria at the time, but we had the Yalode, and we had women in the East. We had the Umuna, something called Umuna at the time, and women had a voice. Women were in the marketplace. Women sat and took decisions. But when the Brits came, British colonial system came in, all of that was eroded. And I think I mentioned some of that, how even the legislation and the ordinances that were introduced by the British colonial officers were not didn't take women into account. For example, I gave a good example, I believe, somewhere about how in Eastern Nigeria, the new technologies that were brought in by the for agriculture, for example, they just bypassed the women, and women were not included in all that was being done. And all of this impacted, like I've given a detailed account of how women struggled to get their voices out. And as we see, this same patriarchal pattern that has been dogging us for all these decades and decades, yes, is still present in contemporary Nigeria. So there's not been a changing pattern per se. I wouldn't even say much has changed. There's still this lopsidedness. I myself tried to get into a bit of politics in Ogun State, but after receiving threats and all of that, I quickly shut down because, and that the political violence is something I raise in the book as well. How it puts women off and nothing is being done to address it. I go as far as mentioning names of women who have lost their lives. And what happened? In this last election, 2023, a woman was killed, woman Labour Party leader was killed in Kaduna. What happened? So there's not been any pleasing pattern, I would say, change in the pattern for women to take part in politics. Women in Nigeria, the use of religion and culture. Gambo Sawaba and Ladi Shehu, because they were members, Gambo Sawaba was the president of the NEPU, the Northern Elements Progressive Union, the women's wing, and Ladi Shehu was the welfare secretary. They went about women to advocate to women, even in Purda. And that was part of what Gambo Sawaba was charged with. She was taken to court several times. And one of the things was that she was trying to water down, trying to spoil and upset, women's beliefs in religion, in Islam. So it didn't deter her, but it also didn't encourage women to, didn't allow them to come out to be part of, to be actively involved. There was what was called the anti-prostitution raids, whereby if a woman was found at a political rally, she was going to be charged with prostitution, and that, I believe, I've read it, and I think I put it in the book. Some northern women have complained that they are seen as prostitutes up to this 21st century. On the question about archives, others have records to, I think the lady was referring to non-traditional archives. I've had this question put to me before, and I have to say that even when I try to speak to, look, there's one of the early barristers, Barrister Adebi, participated in the municipal elections in Lagos in 1950. Now I go to her nephew and I say, Chief, please, I'm looking for a photograph and I want to find out information about Barrister Adebi. He tells me, Barrister Adebi was never a politician. I said, I have the electoral list. Her name is there. Adebisi Adebi. He says, no, it's only my father, Prince Adedoyin, that was a politician. I said, okay, I will send the information to you to see. So I had to send him the information before he said, okay, Mama Chapel Street. And the person that could have told you has just died 3 weeks ago. You have come too late, but I can give you her picture, which is what he did. There was another gentleman that I approached and said, do you know that there were 4 women on the Egba Council in 1949? And I'm trying to reach Chief Sholeye to ask if it, because one of them was called Mrs. Sholeye. I'm trying to reach Chief Sholeye to ask if that was his mother. He said, that was my grandma. I didn't know she was a council member. You are the one telling me. I said, really? I said, okay, can I have a photo of her since she sat on the Egba Council? He said, I have to contact somebody somewhere. Long story short, I didn't even get the photograph and I couldn't wait. I had to go on with what I was doing. So I found out that even trying to get oral stories from some of these women, even the family members don't even know. And through these stories are being lost. So I had to rely so much on, like I said, colonial records, council meetings, newspaper cuttings. I gave a long list of newspaper cuttings in the book, which others can now use as their own sources. Now, the first question, women are not represented properly in the media, even up to now, in terms of how we are, how the stories are framed and reported. There's still so much, there's still so many complaints about that. Back in the day, Onyeko Abayomi, she quoted the media. Then it was called the press. She quoted the press because when she marked the fourth anniversary of her party, she specifically thanked them for coming and supporting her, for so, and I don't think anything changed hands. Monies probably did not change hands back in the 40s, back then. But the story is different today. No disrespect to the media, because I'm a retired journalist myself. So what can we learn? We have to be more vocal, I think. We have to push, continue to push, because those ladies back in the day did not give up. We have to continue pushing and step out. It requires a lot of courage.
Thank you.
A lot of fortitude. We need to go back to our wards and see how we can engage with our people before we begin to build up a political portfolio. So I will just stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have 10 minutes. We have a quick question. Yes, if you'd like to come up. Because apparently she can't see us, we just can't see them. No, it's okay. The light is on, but it's a sabotage, Bob. It's a sabotage. But I'm told that on the computer they can see us. So please.
Good morning, everyone. You can start. Oh, thank you. Listening to you talk about the archives and, I'm sorry. My name is Abiodun. I'm a student at Emory University, and my research interest is Yoruba women in the making of the Atlantic world. And I'm here for archival research. But listening to you talk about archival research and untold histories, and also the problems with the archives and the silences. So I just have a question concerning my research. Is it possible to write a history of Yoruba women in the pre-colonial era, and if you have any suggestions about that. Thank you. Yeah, sure, why not? Why not? Okay, we have an online question. Yeah, why not? Okay, somebody online wants to ask a question for us. Now, Tayo, you don't know this, but we here can't actually see you. So the person who wants to talk, please go ahead and talk. Yep.
Okay. This is Ngozika Obiani. It's just a quick, one of the panelists. It's just a quick. I thought we'll have another moment, a quick notes for someone that asked about the dynamics about in Nigeria politics, the way. So I would just when I was reading the work, my mind was going hand in hand with Aisha Osori's Love Does Not Win an Election, to also give a kind of that sometimes women tends to also pose an obstacle to women participation in politics, like the lived experiences of Aisha Osori when she tried to go into the House of Assembly. And again, when you look at the book, you saw that there are also women, especially when Pelowura was agitating during the war on some restrictions on food. You found out that she didn't get the right support from the women folk again, and then the media also did not even was quick to align with the media and the government. They were quick to align with the opposition voices from the women who were actually against what Pelorua was fighting against in terms of trying to, the government imposing some restrictions on staple food during the World War. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ngozi. So, Tayo, can you answer that and answer with an online question, which is from someone from Amina Baja, who asks, I never heard of this body of work until I saw it online. How are you promoting the book? Can you just take those two quickly, because we have like 5 more minutes?
Okay, thank you very much. For the young lady who asked about, is it possible to write about pre-colonial era? Pre-colonial era. Do I have any suggestions? I would say you may have to rely on a lot of oral history and secondary sources. That is what I think. I don't know if there's anything. But by the way, our archives is in a very poor state, so the sooner you go there, the better. That has been my experience, where when they bring out the newspapers, for example, or they bring out the colonial documents, they're practically falling to pieces. And that means that history is being lost, So you need to make haste and try and get to as many of these archives you can get to as possible, because you know that there are 3 main ones, and then you have the smaller ones. So I believe, since you said you're focusing on Yoruba women, I believe you have an archive in Akure, apart from the one in Ibadan. There's one in Akure and of course Abeokuta, and of course and then Lagos. So you may have to rely on secondary sources and oral history for what it is that you're trying to do. How am I promoting the book? Well, I'm doing my little bit. It's not an easy task. I talk about it online. I tend to write articles. I have a website, agunbiade.com. I tend to write articles on new information I have found, and then use that to say, oh, by the way, I have done something I've done a book. I've written articles on what women were doing during World War I, the fundraising movement that Nigerian women participated in, which I have not seen anywhere. I've written about colonial Lagos, the weddings that went on, the color, the fabrics that were worn, all these bits and pieces of information I have found in the newspapers in the British Library. I've sort of just brought them together to say, well, this is what we're doing. This is what life was like. Though there are not a lot of photographs, but this is what women were doing during this early years, 1913, Charlotte Obasa, her bus service, bits and pieces that I see all over the place. I tend to write about them and then link it to the fact that, oh, by the way, I have this book. It can be got from CambridgeScholars.com or Foyles, the bookshop in the UK, Waterstone, like I said, and Amazon.com. So that is how I have tried to promote it. But of course, I'm open to ideas because I don't know it all. So if the lady can kindly give me some fresh ideas on what else I can do, or she wants to talk about my book, I'm certainly open to that, because these stories need to be out there. The stories need to be out there. People are surprised, like I was surprised, because the professors in Unilag did not tell me women did anything. So, we need to unsilence, and we need to say, our experiences, which is why, writing the speeches of the legislators, the likes of Margaret Ekpo, for example, and Wuro, I didn't paraphrase. I put it there. This is what these women said. This is for posterity. This is what they said back in the day. So I'm not putting my own thoughts into what Margaret Ekpo said about not removing the feathers from the caps of the chiefs in the House of Chiefs, or what Wuro said about having let us remember the women when we are dishing out all these these national honors. Let us remember the women. So that this is what I have tried to do mostly with the book. Thank you very much.
Tayo, and just before I close, I'm going to say thank you very much for writing a really inspirational and insightful book. I encourage everybody to everybody here, at least to get your institutions to buy a copy. It's an academic book, so please get your institutions to buy a copy. Thank you very much, Tayo. To my panelists in person and to Ngozi online, thank you very much. And to all of you here who have been so engaged and have sat here through the technological problems, thank you very much. Please give Tayo a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for investing your time and energy into this process. Thank you, Professor Gloria Chukwu. It's a great pleasure to meet you. Thank you, Shola Daniels. And thank you, the lady from IFRA. Pardon me if I couldn't remember your name. Thank you. I have some association with IFRA. I believe I was a fellow at some point. And thank you, Professor Uche Azikiwe. Please make sure your institution gets a copy of the book. And thank you for questions. And thank you, sorry, the lady in Grenoble. I'll be in touch with you. Ngozi will be in touch with you. Thank you also for your wonderful insights. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for all your wonderful questions and for also helping me along the way, because I'm working on the next book, on another volume.
Thank you and bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.